As they say, probably before you go on air. Three, two, one. We are recording. Josh, no, dude. As we were just now that we move on from hair discussion and job discussion, it's good to reconnect. Just at the end of our campaign. Um, so I thought it'd be maybe more useful from yourself if you could just very briefly explain like cool down and InBev and kind of how they work together, just for anybody who's like, who's this dude with the fine ponytail? What does he do?
Sure. So look, basically, as InBev, right, as a beer company, we saw an opportunity inside of the gaming space
Yeah.
and esports more particularly, and we kind of looked at the problem when we looked at it and said, okay, how can we play a relevant role inside of this space? How can we push the innovation to an extra mile, and how can we enter the market? From there, so the project actually goes back to 2019 and comes out of our tech incubator. And we created a first iteration that was called My Local Esports Bar.
Got it.
So My Local Esports Bar had a first general premise, which was connecting bar owners inside of our bar network with esports fans in order to host viewing parties.
Got it.
And this went on from dev stage and early seed stage to quite some success back in 2020, where we hosted about 50 events across the UK.
Yep.
And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, obviously we could not roll out any events anymore. So the whole, bring the online, offline and live into your local pub was severely compromised. So we went back to the drawing board and really kind of looked at what we had created.
Yeah.
And we found that we were lacking quite a bit in terms of brand personality and kind of the basics.
Yeah.
So we went back and built an actual endemic esports brand around the concept.
Yeah.
Redid completely the platform.
Yeah.
And really took a look at what value we were creating for the community and how we could first give back to that community before we tried to enter it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there, Cooldown was born. And so we went live with Cooldown as a brand and platform in May.
Yeah.
And one of the key things that we were missing, obviously, from My Local Esports Bar was SEO.
Sure.
So being a beverage company at the start, we don't have extensive SEO knowledge.
Normal, yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely a gap for us to fill in our knowledge, and so that's kind of where we started our hunt for an SEO company with limited experience in the field, and we came across you guys, and I think we connected on well, you guys understood what we were trying to accomplish, and it felt like we would have a pretty collaborative approach to working with you guys, and so that's kind of what kind of hooked us with working with you guys to start out with.
Wow, thank you for that explanation, by the way. That is the best overview from these calls I've done in the past where I've asked people about the whole journey, because I've then prompted people to ask a question or two. But yeah, it's like, is he reading my script? What is he doing? So when you were looking, of course, for an SEO partner, were there, like, of course, as you mentioned, like the collaborative approach being something that was quite important, and understanding of your goals of being quite important. Were there things, for example, that before even we got on a call together that were part of your kind of like shortlist criteria that were important when you were doing your initial research?
Yeah, so I mean, SEO is kind of one of those topics where you can kind of get into it fairly quickly, but then the finer points are kind of where the devil's in the detail, and that's kind of where you need to have a bit more expertise on.
Sure.
We quickly realized that we were going to have to figure out meta text and basic keywords and domain authority. Like that was kind of the stuff that we quickly understand, but without understanding kind of the underlying concepts.
Yeah.
So part of the approach was also important for us to understand what the hell we were supposed to do.
Sure.
And what were the important points to touch on first working with you guys, but then afterwards as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then during, I recall our first meeting talking about potential ways to take this, what you're trying to achieve in timeline, and the shifting nature of your development, as well as perhaps your the commercial goals and the impact it had upon page builds and keywords? I know that viewing party, for example, was one towards the end of it that you were potentially reconsidering as a keyword from a search perspective. What's your feeling been on the engagement you've had with Pearl Lemon throughout the campaign since we started working together?
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's several levels to it, right? I mean, first, anytime we had a question, you guys were fairly prompt to answer.
Sure.
Sometimes a little bit went over our head, actually, to be honest. But we at least have a good understanding of where we are at.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been there without you guys having a collaborative approach with us.
Yeah.
And we for sure have quite a bit in our backlog to tackle in the next coming months.
Sure.
We discussed that on our last meeting. So yeah, for me, that was kind of the key of getting, first at least an idea of which direction we were supposed to take. Then, fixing the basics and laying foundations, decent, technical foundations for moving forward.
Yep.
You mentioned like the keywords around viewing parties and that kind of stuff. And, I think for us, it's challenging as well because we're trying to create something that doesn't exist.
Sure.
So when we're looking at keywords and looking at search volumes, I mean, if it doesn't exist, it's not going to have a big search volume, obviously. But then it's kind of, finding the right balance in between what does exist.
Yeah.
And what can potentially exist in the future if we're successful.
Yeah.
And then making sure that we're building against both of those scenarios.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where we still have a lot of work to do.
Sure.
And probably going back to the drawing board, but at least we were able to realize that and to kind of understand what were the basic challenges that we were supposed to, tackle and how to move forward from there.
And did you feel that in terms of like, as you look back now, I guess maybe at the campaign, do you feel that it was a success overall in terms of you got what you were seeking to achieve from this journey?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, I mean, I think the foundations or technical foundations are pretty much there.
Yeah.
And the ones that are not completely finalized, we at least have a roadmap how to complete them in the future.
Yeah.
Which is great. And in terms of just basic results, I mean, obviously we've done the first steps in running towards building backlinks, domain authority, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, overall happy.
Good. And then how did you feel about like the reports as well? Because there was the stuff questions that you had and we come back with answers. There's also a lot of stuff that we send you, technical recommendations, content recommendations, keyword mapping, content calendar, work in progress, link building sheet, end of month report. What was your feeling on our general keeping you in the loop kind of, and your understanding, I guess, of what was happening?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two parts of it. First part is from our side, right? It's hard. We're still a very small team.
Sure.
So there's a lot to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
So I mean, for me, I delegated a lot of that to home.
Yeah.
While we were working together. So probably would have liked to have maybe one extra or two extra catch-ups physically and not via email, because that kind of just makes communication flow a little bit easier.
Makes sense.
And at least for me, it's much easier to grasp general concepts, be able to have an exchange in real time, etc.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, the reports are very complete. Obviously, there's a lot of info in there. And so yeah, so overall it was okay. And I think part of it is from our side, we could have followed up on a few of the underlying questions we had a little bit more in depth. But yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't put them on you guys.
No, thank you. And I think, there's part of that's good feedback as well. Maybe, a couple more calls that would have helped the campaign in general. As you said, I think that makes sense. I certainly feel like we didn't speak like much as an example when I look back at the campaign. So I think that's, actually good feedback, for us overall. Well, look, I mean, I think that, finally, are there any final comments that you'd like to add for anyone who's looking at this from a Pearl Lemon due diligence perspective, when they're thinking about, okay, should I onboard with this agency? Just any comments you'd have for anyone who's, at that buying stage and they're making a final call, or they're, conducting due diligence once a proposal's gone out or something?
Look, SEO it's an animal house, right? There's there is a lot of different companies out there
Sure.
doing a lot of different things on a lot of different levels, right? It can be, and they're offering all kinds of different price points. So in general, I feel like we've achieved a certain level of trust with you guys. I'm not disappointed in. I don't think you guys are the most expensive or the cheapest in the realm by far.
Yeah.
But I feel like we paid for what you guys delivered, and we got what we were looking for out of it, which is basically technical baseline, beginning of a strategy that we also understood would not go from 0 to 1,000 in the 6 months time we had.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you guys did share, your knowledge to make sure that we could actually move forward, and you were flexible enough to help us kind of work within our technical constraints as well. So overall, I'm really happy with the collaborative approach. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, probably should have followed up and had more.
It's on us as well. Yeah,
and partially on us as well. But yeah, no, overall, I mean, happy. I mean,
we're here.
Guys are trustworthy, at least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Josh, thank you, everybody. You know where the phone is. So no, it's great, Josh. Honestly, I really, really appreciate it, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Pleasure.